Hello and welcome to this episode of Groundbreakers with CGTN. I'm Chunying live from Beijing. Today we continue to delve into China's third plenary session, which concluded last Thursday with an adoption of resolution on comprehensively deepening China's reform. So today we're going to zoom in on this document and to understand what makes this political event so crucial and how will all these reforms reshape China and the rest of the world. And joining me here in the discussion are our distinguished guest, Dr. Zheng, the research fellow of the Institute of International Politics and Economics in Serbia. Great to have you with us. And we also have Professor Zheng, the professor from the University of International Business and Economics in China. And Professor David Monet, the director of the Center for Africa-China Studies, University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And we have Mr. Dato Majid Khan, the former Malaysian ambassador to China. And last but not least, Ms. Yuting Zhu, the assistant professor at the National University of Singapore. So great to have you with us all again. And welcome to our show, ladies and gentlemen. And the document starts off with an overview of the significance of carrying out all these economic and social reforms in China, setting out a quite ambitious target of completing all these reforms by the year 2029. And it also lays out many policy directions in various areas, including education, economy, fiscal policy, etc. And earlier, in a keynote speech, the president of China Media Group expressed and talked about his take on the opportunities ahead in the blueprint of China's deepening reform. Let's take a listen first.
习近平主席指出，改革开放这场中国的第二次革命，不仅深刻改变了中国，也深刻影响了世界。新时代中国全面深化改革，是以中国式现代化全面推进民族复兴、强国建设伟业的关键一招，也必将为人类探索现代化道路和更好社会制度提供新助力，为世界各国发展提供新机遇，注入新动能。面对变乱交织的当今世界，面对机遇挑战并存的新一轮科技革命和产业变革，中国把改革摆在更加突出的位置。改革的步伐不会停滞，绝不搞偷工锻炼、小院高墙。中国将始终与世界深度交融，命运与共，以各国一道，共同开创人类现代化事业的光明前景。
All right, so many opportunities ahead. And now let's go deeper into this document. Let's start with you, Professor Zheng. The whole world has been following this event over the past few days. So tell us your take on the significance of the third plenary session. Why is it so important?
Well, first, thank you very much for this opportunity. The president of CMG made a quite compelling and passionate speech. So it's really good to hear him say these things. I think what the significance of this document, it really lies in the setting the goals of where China is supposed to go. I think it sets out a grandiose and also quite ambitious objective of reforms in the next few years. It sets the goals for 2029 and also for 2035. So I think this is really a document, a guideline document. Sets aside a couple of objectives and directions. So I think it really, it's significant in that sense. And also I think the significance also lies in, essentially indicating to the world that China is going to continue this path of reform and opening up. I think and it's also very ambitious plan in my view. Reportedly over 300 reform measures will be introduced over time in many aspects of China's economic system and also political system in my view. So I think it's a very ambitious plan. It's grandiose plan. It indicates to the world that China is here to stay, to continue its reform course. That's what I really think about the significance of this document.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zhang Gong. As you just mentioned, the document seems like a guideline, right, that offers us a glimpse of what the officials discussed. And you just described those plans quite ambitious. So I would like to ask Professor Yu Ting, what's your overall observation of the document or of the communique?
Hi, thank you, Chunying. Thank you for having me here. So for this document, I think the two keywords that I get is first, Chinese modernization, and second, the way is to comprehensively deepen reform and continue opening up. I think two strong emphasis that I observe. One is on the economic reform and one is on the technological innovation. I think this document underscores a shift in China's approach to economic management and focusing on addressing both the internal structure challenge and external pressures. I think some policies aiming at stabilizing the property market, promoting the foreign investment, and forcing technology innovation are probably the center to this reform agenda. That's my overall observation of the doc.
Yeah, thank you, Yu Ting. And we're going to touch upon all these aspects later in our show. And also talking about reforms. I know that, Mr. Dato, you have lived in China before for many years. So I think that you must be quite familiar with the word reforms or opening up, right? So from your perspective, what does this latest reform entail? What makes it different from your perspective?
I think I have the good fortune of observing China's transformation in the early 1980s, from scarcity to abundance, and also from poverty to prosperity. So the reform experiment 40 years ago actually created prosperity achievement, and I think the third plenary decision reflect on these successes, as well also the current internal challenges and external challenges. Because in the 1990s, when the reform was first mooted, the condition environment were different. But I think both today, China faces a very challenging position, both internally and externally. But I think the third plenary has come up a very strategic decision, provide a very clear guideline how China will achieve its next development goal, particularly to achieve what is described as to advance Chinese modernization with a high standard socialist market economy, using new technological innovation revolution as well as industrial transformation. So this actually will be a catalyst. And another thing that we notice, also the lot of pro-growth strategies that are actually implemented in the reform measures, as well as affirmative actions, particularly in trying to have a more balanced urban-rural development.
Yeah.
So I think overall, it provides actually for global investors and for us outside China a better understanding of China's future direction.
Yeah, thank you. So both challenges and opportunities ahead. Yes, and the reform is entering a new phase, a new stage, perhaps. And now, my next question to you, Mr. Stekik. We noticed that in the communique, Beijing addresses the need to better leverage the role of the market, saying it will lift restrictions on the market while ensuring effective regulation. So how do you interpret this? Do you see it as more emphasis on market, on economic development?
Well, also from my side, thank you very much for having me here today with you. Well, to me, this is a clear sign that China is ready, I would say, to follow the new trends, the new paths in its modernization, but also to tackle some challenges. From what we have been able to read from this communique is the fact that China's government and leadership is now quite committed and ready to consolidate and to develop the public sector. This is, to me, the very first important things from this communique. And the second one is that the Chinese leadership is now ready to ensure that all the economic entities, all the companies, enterprises, and businesses in China, under various forms of ownership, now will have definitely the equal access to what the communique says, factors of production. This is very important to understand that all the legal entities, the economic entities that are actually quite operating now in China will have equal access to the markets, to compete in the markets on the equal footing, and also to be protected by the law. So this will create, to my stance, something that is unified national markets, and this is beneficial not only for the Chinese domestic companies, but also to the international enterprises and companies that are doing their businesses in China. All of this, I would say, that is definitely a part of the so-called new China's development philosophy. And this is actually something what my previous interlocutor said. This is aiming to build the definitely high standard socialist market economy, as Communique has said. It will provide quite important guarantees for China's modernization, not only in the next few years, but I would say up to next 10 years, maybe up to 2035, as this document envisages. So from my point of view, this document is a quite standardized idea and new ideology of China's new developments, new trade reform, and of course the call, I would say, from the external parties to join the China's endeavors in these efforts.
All right, thank you. You just mentioned the word high standard, high-level socialist market economy, and this is also a frequently mentioned word in the readout, actually. So my next question to you, Mr. David, how do you understand this term, and what more opportunities do you see for your country or for Africa specifically when China in the pursuit of this goal?
I think as my colleagues have already alluded to many points that are clear in the document, the question of high standard is of paramount importance. We see the consistent of the Chinese Communist Party from Chairman Mao to President Xi Jinping, a consistent improvement of the economy that is led by the party and it's people-centered. And by high quality is a consistent improvement, looking at all factors, particularly in the economy, to ensure that there's quality modernization through science and technology, innovation, and ensure that to achieve the goals of 2035 for a socialist market economy, you meet certain standards, breakthroughs in a very competitive and changed world order. And therefore, I think all of the above is quite important to Africa in its relationship with China through the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, that the exchanges become enriching and draw lessons from China's upliftment of people, a people-centered democracy, as well as to use usage of science and technology and a constant innovation, in particularly from the party's struggle, using new technology, using new words that fit the modern era, the current modern era. And therefore, I think the document is quite rich in terms of furtherance of the revolution in China, which has so much implication on the African continent. Science and technology, on issues of health, lessons we have learned in the past. And therefore, I think when Africans and Chinese meet once again, this year in Beijing on the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, more lessons, I think, and more agreements, and the opening up of that economy will be of great importance for the African people, particularly accessing Chinese universities, Chinese markets, as well as learning on the good governance led by the Chinese Communist Party.
All right, thank you. As you just mentioned, a lot more changes, a lot more exciting changes to expect. And as a very good partner of China, Africa, I think that all these changes will play a very big, very important role in African economy as well. And we'll get back to that topic later in our show. And next, I know that financial reform is also one key focus of the readout. So my next question to you, Mr. Zheng, as the readout calls for deepening institutional reforms in finance, taxes, and fiscal policies, what measures, from your perspective, does this hint at, and what could all these mean for China's economy?
Well, there has been quite significant changes in China's financial market, especially the banking sector. I think President Xi made a speech early on talking about reforms in the finance sector. This is actually earlier than when this document was released. I think the overall message is very clear. The financial sector should develop in accordance with the development of the industrial sectors. I think his famous words is that overall the financial sector should be serving the real economy, right? This actually resonates quite well with what Winston Churchill used to say. He said that he would rather see Great Britain, the finance sector, the industrial sector, be more content, and the financial sector to be less proud. I think it sort of resonates in that sense. Another very important message President Xi has mentioned is that the financial sector's development has to be exclusive growth, exclusive development. In other words, has to be a people-centered agenda. It's always been holding very dear to his heart. That the finance. The lending activities should be inclusive in nature, targeting small and medium-sized businesses. This is the one difficult area for the banking industry in general around the world, actually. Banks typically don't want to make loans to these small and medium-sized businesses because they are less profitable. They would rather make loans to big, corporations, state-owned enterprises in China. But I think it's important that the small and medium-sized businesses are the workhorse of creating jobs in our economy, and it's important that they get the support from the banking industry. I think over the years, this is something that probably less emphasized by the banking executives. And a couple of other things. For example, he also mentioned the importance of making loans to address the green cause, right? Things related to the climate agenda, environmental protection, these things. So I think overall, we need to keep in mind that the finance sector should not just grow and develop for its own sake, right? It has to be tied to the real economy. It's serving a ancillary role, supporting role for the real economy, for the manufacturing sectors, for the things that matter to the average folks, and also related to small and medium-sized businesses. So I think he sets the tone for the financial sector reform for these things I've just mentioned. So I think I would expect to see changes in the financial sector. As a matter of fact, it's already starting to see changes. There's quite significant announcements made, for example, regarding the salary level for the financial executives, right? It used to be exorbitant, but now I think they have to tone down a little bit. So I think things like that will gradually come out, as I would expect, starting from the central bank and downward. And this is probably definitely something that's good for the economy, for the mass market, for the people who are in the struggling and working very hard in the small and medium-sized sectors. These are people and businesses that deserve help. And overall, and after all, we have to keep in mind that what is the development's purpose is all for, right? It's really have to be benefiting the people.
Yeah.
Go back to President Xi's people-centered agenda.
Yeah, I remember on many occasions, President Xi stresses the role that financial market or finance should play in the overall economic development. It says, as what you just mentioned before, it should better serve the real economy, and it plays a really important role in bolster the overall economic development. So we're looking forward to more policies coming out in this sector. And talking about fiscal or financial reform, I know that Malaysia has also gone through a very comprehensive fiscal reform over the past few years. So tell us how investors' confidence been affected, and thanks to the reform, Mr. Dato. And as China now pledges more efforts to reform its financial market, what additional potential do you see in this area in Chinese market?
Well, like many other countries, including China, Malaysia attaches great importance to securing investors' confidence for its development goal. So this confidence requires a balance of many conducive factors, such as availability of infrastructure, incentive, friendly procedure. But more important is also the health of the economy of the host country and its budgetary system. Because I think most countries do not, manage well its revenue against expenditure, its debt ratio, and also the tax regime, which seem as regressive. So I noticed that in the plenary reform measures, there's actually a very detailed proposal for China to reform a whole series the fiscal policy, including the budget system, the taxation system, also the role of the central government and the local government in terms of resource allocation. Because I think many investors are worried about the financial situation of local government, and I think a lot of attention will be given to this. So I think these are important measures proposed, and this I think will create a measure of confidence. Anyhow, for China, I think apart from this, China has some fundamental attraction for investors to look in. It has actually an expanding market, 400 million middle class, that China has a very competitive manufacturing, ability, and also China is well connected in terms of the supply chain, of the global supply chain. So these are also factors that could help China to be resilient in facing current challenges.
All right, thank you. And next up, my next question to you, Professor Yu Ting. And talking about finance, I know that earlier this year, the Deputy Prime Minister Zheng said that Singapore and China can work together to ensure financial stability. But I'm sure.
Hear you, Chunying.
But I'm sure that.
I think Chunying's voice is muted, and it's small, and it's a low voice anyway. To speak louder.
It's very soft.
Yeah. To speak louder.
Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
No. Can't hear you.
Yeah.
And can you hear me now?
No sound.
I think they're working on it.
听不见了。
Because she just disappeared.
It was very low voice anyway, right? It's not just me, I think.
Okay.
Right? Is that right?
Yes.
So,
I
Ms.
really
Yu Ting,
informed them,
Yu Ting.
Okay.
So tell us how the two countries can work together to bolster
No, it's okay.
economic development.
We can now
Yeah.
hear you.
So, Ms. Yu Ting, let's get back to you. Talking about financial development. I noticed that earlier this year, Deputy Prime Minister Zheng said that Singapore and China can work together to ensure financial stability. But I'm sure that the potential of economic collaboration of the two countries extends far beyond that. So, what more opportunities do you see for collaboration between China and Singapore in this blueprint of reform?
I think there are many opportunities, as I mentioned, based on my reading of this doc. I think technology innovation will be a keyword in the next 10 years in China. I think now, like my school, NUS, we already have some formal collaborations with like Chunying government, Guangzhou government, and also Suzhou government, and we established the joint research centers so that we can cultivate PhD together, and we can, like for the researchers, we can also jointly work on some important research project across all kinds of fields. I think this is a great initiatives, and I believe if there can be more, then I think this also fits with the to do the further technology innovation, to work on some hard problems. I think it will help both the China and Singapore together. So definitely lots of opportunity exists.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of opportunities ahead, especially in the technological innovation. And also, technological innovation is one of the key buzzwords in this document as well, as the country mapped out its ambition to push for breakthroughs in many core technologies. So, Mr. Stekik, I'm wondering, what's your take on this plan, and what does it mean for China's economic development?
Well, first, we all need to be aware that China is a technological superpower nowadays already. The number of not only scientific articles, but also the patents that are registered by the Chinese researchers is really immense and staggering. So China is even pushing nowadays for further reforms, for a deepening technological breakout, as the document says. I believe that we should pay attention to four major issues when it comes to technology and development in China. First one is definitely the artificial intelligence. The second one, and quite more important to my stance, is the development of the semiconductors. The microchip industry is definitely something that China should rely and will rely, hopefully, upon in the near future, because China definitely needs to decrease the level of dependency of international partners in the semiconductors industry. Not only that, but we all know that the semiconductors are used to develop and to evolve the sophisticated defense industry also. So semiconductors will definitely play an important role in this technological breakout. And then we also have something which is very well important when it comes to global supply chains, and these are critical raw materials. The European Union and China are probably two main competitors when it comes to the critical raw materials, and the European Commission even admitted China and just acknowledged that China is one of the main suppliers of the European Union with critical raw materials nowadays. For instance, one of these critical raw materials is lithium, which is quite very well important for manufacturing the EVs, the electric vehicles. But on another hand, we see that European Commission has been put all the China's electric vehicles under the severe package of tariffs and custom tariffs. Also, the United States of America has imposed 100% for Chinese electric vehicles. So I believe that actually this kind of global supply chain will definitely be revolving around the EVs and export from China's high tech to the European Union and also to American markets. Going back to your question on how this will affect global supply chain stability, I would believe that some breakthroughs in areas like blockchain or 5G or even renewable energy will definitely disrupt the so-called traditional supply chain models. Will now lead to new ones that require significant adjustments from global supply chain stakeholders. It will also increase or decrease probably supply chain resilience in the future. Yeah. And this is my very last point for this take, the issue of the social implications. I believe that actually all these technological breakthroughs in China will achieve significant labor market changes internally in China, because it will lead to shifts to labor market, potentially reducing the need for low-skilled labor, if I may say so, while at the same time increasing demand for tech-savvy professionals. And this could definitely affect the even global labor dynamics, and to my stance, it will necessitate reskilling initiatives that should come from Chinese authorities, not only the national, but in the subnational, in the regional, provincial level in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you for insights. So not only social implications, but also economic implications, and it's not only beneficial to domestic market, but the global supply chain, the global market as well. So, and as China plans to propel its economy, as we just mentioned, through tech innovations, through the upgrading of its manufacturing supply chains, what do you make of the role that China plays in promoting the productivity and innovation in Africa, Mr. David?
Africa is quite central on a number of issues, and some of them my colleague has already alluded to. When it comes to critical minerals, Africa holds the bulk of all required critical minerals, and they're key as we enter the fourth industrial revolution. And therefore, I think the role of technology, artificial intelligence, 5G, nanotechnology, as well as the question of space. I think Africa wants to be part to that creative way in which China is developing itself through science and technology. And this will be in a win-win, not just Africa receiving, but working in collaboration with a strategic partner in China and ensure that you upskill workers on the African continent. I think through the Belt and Road initiative, I think it will be very important that some of the manufacturing sector are relocated on the African continent and empowering and taking the bulk of Africans out of poverty. So that is quite critical. Yeah. And this goes a long way to ensure that there is a South-South cooperation, and China's role is quite critical as we see increasingly China's trade is slightly moving away from the developed world, more to the global South, and more so to Africa. So all these factors are important, and therefore we're looking forward to joint ventures in this regard.
You just talk about trade and Belt and Road Initiative. I think that is a great example of China's commitment of opening up, and that is also what has been reiterated in this document, saying that China is going to further opening up its economy. So my next question to you, Mr. Zheng, the document maps out a vision to deepen its reform, especially in trade and investment for overseas countries. So what areas of economy could this impact in your perspective?
Yeah, well, I would talk about from two perspectives. One is investment and domestic business environment, and the other one is trade. I think the document talks about opening up measures related to investment, what he describes as high quality opening up. I think for that issue, I think I can think of a couple of dimensions, a couple of aspects. One, for example, is regarding the competitive neutrality issue, the competition policy, for example. Essentially, I think it is talking about basically, making China's business environment comparable to the kind of standards as specified in fairly high opening up regional free trade agreements. For example, the CPTPP, for example. It sets the standard for the countries opening up to be qualified for joining the comprehensive and progressive TPP. And I think there's still a gap here that China still needs to work in that direction. Including, as I said, in the areas of competition, state aid, for example, intellectual property protection, government procurement. These are the old areas that some countries are concerned about in China's case. That's one thing. Now, regarding trade, I think there got to be also reforms in areas of trade related to to the future, in my view. Trade is rapidly transforming itself. Moving more towards digital trade, for example, moving more towards fragmented trade. And I think China actually is taking a leadership in these areas, and the regulatory framework, the role by the governments needs to be catching up with rapid developments in trade. I think the document talks about some of these issues. So I think overall, we would expect to see, I think, first of all, China to be very close to a open economy, as a lot of people think about, like economies like Hong Kong, like many European countries, China would be moving rapidly towards that direction.
Yeah.
And second, from a trade perspective, I would expect that China will continue to be a major force in international trade. Currently is already a largest exporting country and second largest importing country, and we will continue to keep that role.
Yeah.
And also I would say that we probably will make the trade relationship with many of our partners to be more balanced, to be more fair in that sense.
Yeah. So more efforts. I'm sure that more efforts will be made to conform to the international global trade standard and to improve the business environment in China and to attract more trade partners all over the world, perhaps. And talking about,
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And talking about trade and partnerships, I know that this year China and Malaysia are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the bilateral diplomatic ties. And we know that China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner for almost 15 consecutive years. And in 2023, statistics show that 17% of Malaysia's global trade was done with China. And that is quite impressive. So from your perspective, what does strengthening bilateral trade mean to your country?
Well, Malaysia-China trade and economic partnership are the main pillars of the bilateral relationship between the country. In fact, if you look over the years, Malaysia has benefited from China open and reform policy in the last 40 years. China WTO membership gave access to Chinese market for Malaysian commodity. China's prosperity also provided a market for Malaysian product and services such as tourism and education, and benefited from China's export of its technology and capital to the various countries, including to Malaysia. So I think with all the proposed reforms, it's said that China will open wider, provide more access for global goods into the Chinese market. This could only mean, for the two countries, there will be more sharing of prosperity between the two countries and China and the other parts of the world. It will consolidate the bilateral friendship and cooperation, and also it create a stronger connectivity and integration of the two economies. Yeah. And this development will not only benefit the two countries, but also will lead to development of regional peace and development, which China could play a leading role.
Yeah. That's mutually beneficial, of course. And I noticed that our guests today you happen to come from all of our China's big trade partner countries. So, for example, Serbia, as China's foremost trading partner in Central and Eastern Europe, Serbia, I know, has earlier this month implemented a new free trade agreement with China. So looking ahead into the future, what more opportunities do you see when it comes to trade and investment, especially as China push forward its reform in trade?
This is correct. China and Serbia have concluded the 2 years negotiation of the free trade agreement, the FTA. Last October it was signed and it entered into force this July, the 1st of July. So basically only 3 weeks ago. So to my opinion, it is still quite early to forecast for the long-term benefits for both sides. But for what I can now say is the fact that this FTA between Serbia and China is going to lift off the customs, the tariffs from $6,000 categories of goods or products. And step by step in the coming years, in the 5, 10, and 15 years, it is going to lift down the tariffs for the remaining 4,000 products. So in total, this FTA tackles 10,000 groups of products that are being regularly imported and exported from and to Serbia and China. So this one is actually quite unequal because Serbia is, may I remind you, a very small country with a population of less than 7 million people. And even territorially, we are not that comparable to China mainland. So this is important for our government. I would say a very huge success for our government to be able to negotiate this kind of agreements. Nowadays, our exports to China are quite low comparing to export of China to Serbia. But our government is, of course, hoping that the export ratio from Serbia could be improved in the coming years. What is very important during the President Xi's visit, Xi Jinping's visit to Belgrade early this year, he highlighted the importance that this FTA must be implemented in the best possible manner, as he said, in the pro bono, in actually bona fides, so in a very good hope that both countries can benefit from this FTA. For the Chinese side, I would definitely say that signing the FTA with a very small country, with a geographically quite distant country, is one proof that it does every single step to make concrete steps in terms of its proclaimed free trade policy and trade policy across the globe. On another hand, also while President Xi was in Belgrade 1 month ago, a staggering number of 28 similar agreements also were signed. And all of these agreements were implying to trade cooperation, most of them actually, to trade cooperation. And what's more important from Serbian side, Serbia's government has deeply supported the China's Global Development Initiative. And this is very important variable also to understand the Chinese as an actor of the global development in the coming years, as Serbia also endorsed the Belt and Road Initiative, which marked and made a remarkable footprint in Serbia in terms of projects, investment ratio, and the overall Chinese presence in Serbia. And very last point, as Professor Gong has implied very correctly, President Xi Jinping's development philosophy and development agenda is revolving around, I would say, people-centered approach. This is very important to understand. This is what is, to my opinion, distinctive development policy when we compare it to the unilateralism era of Western dominated development policy across the globe. So this is something that we should definitely keep in mind, especially that it has been widely recognized by the United Nations that this GDI, so the Global Development Initiative, is in line with the SDGs, with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations.
Yeah, so obviously, China's reform is not only, it's not just about China, domestic market or its own people, but it's also in line with the benefit of the people globally. And you just talk about Belt and Road Initiative, and that echoes with is a view shared by Mr. David as well. So let's get back to Africa. We talked about China's commitment to reform its trade structure. So what are some of the changes that you would like to see in China's trade reform that could possibly benefit African countries?
There's so many areas of improvement, I think, through the Forum on China-Africa cooperation. For instance, I think Africa-China trade relation should uniquely and distinctively be seen far from your historically Africa and former colonial powers, which is just a question of trading. In an unequal trade, there's no win and win, as well as trading in raw material. Take minerals dirty out of the country. And therefore, I think when it comes to Africa, China, there's a need to have joint ventures and beneficiation of most of these factors. I think we've seen growth in trade, substantial growth. I think more work needs to be done to ensure that African products quality products get into the Chinese market. I think there's a lot of work being done, particularly in the agricultural sector. I think need to go beyond that, so that when we talk about the Belt and Road initiative, it's not just the road. A number of things that go through a road. There's cultural, there's people to people, there is issue of civilization, education, exchanges, and I think we want to see the relationship just to go beyond trade volumes to ensure that we center the people and lessons learned from China in the past, both good and bad, to ensure that we deal with issues of climate change, we deal with technology that we've been talking about, and ensure that technology and big companies are not moving all over the world and do whatever they want. Somehow you rein them in and ensure that there are regulations that ensure that their activities empowers and develop people, not individual, the 1%, as the case in the Western world. There are a number of activities that we also want to see and change, and I think the leadership in Africa as well as in China is working quite closely to ensure that trade and all other interactions, improvement of value chain, global value chain in health, and lessons learned from COVID-19, we constantly work together and to avoid being hit by yet another pandemic unprepared, as was the case with COVID-19. And there's so many areas of where we want to see all these changes. And I think we are on the right path. More can be done, and all cannot be left to the political leadership. Academics have a role to play, universities, as well as civil society.
Yeah, everyone has a role to play in the pursuit of reform and economic development. And I agree with you that there is indeed a lot of room, a lot of potential for improvement and for progress. And perhaps that's why everyone, all eyes are on this plenary session, all eyes are on the communique, and that's why we're here today to discuss this communique and to discuss the reform plan. And yeah, we're quite, I think all of us are looking forward to the exciting changes as well as more concrete and tangible approaches and measures coming out under those guidelines. All right, thanks again for your insights. We really appreciate your time, and that would do it for this edition of Groundbreakers with CGTN. Thanks for your time. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.